So in this lecture, what we're going to cover are some naming practice problems. And the things that we've learned so far, we're going to try to apply them to some pretty complicated molecules that are not entirely super realistic, but they get the point across. And so let's take a look at this molecule over here on the left. Now this molecule, we can pretty quickly see what the base is going to be. The root is going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 membered alkane. And we remember that as being heptane. And it's in a ring, so of course we're going to add the cyclo prefix to it first, okay? So that's our root, as our cycloheptane. But we notice that it has two things coming off of it. And when there are only two things and a very small number of things, the order is going to be alphabetical. So if you had to start picking, right, so we have to agree on where to start, either 1 or 2. And alphabetically, we can see that this ring right here is a 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a cyclobutane. And then over here we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's a cyclopentane. And if we look at the alphabet, we can see that the cyclobutyl would be the first one. So that ends up getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we number that small ring that way. So that would mean that our two substituents are going to be a 1 cyclobutane and a 2 cyclopentane. Except, of course, when they're prefixes, we don't call them cyclopentane, we call them cyclobutyl. What do we call them? Cyclobutyl. Oops. And not cyclopentane, but cyclopentyl. All right, and so when we put this together, again, we put it together so that the names, these are in alphabetical order as well, and conveniently they're now also in numerical order. So we would take 1 cyclobutyl, put it all the way out here in front, move this thing over, and 2 cyclopentyl, and we will move that down here. All right, and then that's how we build a molecule name. 1 cyclobutyl, and then we have to add a dash. 2 cyclopentyl, cycloheptane. Okay, now let's look at the structure on the right. The structure on the right over here, we can go back and can count that the core, the root, is still a 7-membered ring, and it's still heptane, and it is still cyclo. Now it's got 3 substituents on it instead of 2. And when you have more than 2 substituents, you have to change how you count the ring number, right? So as a general reminder, if you only have 1 substituent on a ring, you don't need any numbers at all. Methyl cycloheptane, you just draw the methyl wherever you want. Otherwise, who cares? If you have 2 substituents on a ring, you go by alphabet. When you have more than 2 substituents on a ring, you minimize the number, all right? So if you look at this, we can say count this way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we would end up with a 1, 5, 7 substitution pattern. That's pretty high number. If we counted the other way, we start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's much better because now our numbers are 1, 3, and 4. But that's still not the lowest. We can still get lower than 1, 3, and 4. If we do it this way, for instance, we get 1, 2, 4. All right. So by counting it this way, starting at this one up here, our numbers are the lowest they can be, 1, 2, 4. So once we've got those numbered, then we proceed just like we did in the last step. Now this, of course, you remember, is a cyclobutyl. And then this is a cyclopentyl. And then this little thing down here, it's an interesting shape. You remember from the common names for these smaller systems, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons, so it's some kind of butyl. It's a butane of some sort, and it is technically called a tert butane or a tert butyl group. And the tert comes from the fact that you've got a tertiary carbon in it. So tert butyl would be 4 carbons in this configuration right here. Okay, so now that we have them all numbered, we can draw the number in front of them. And so what this is in our numbering system is a 4 tert butyl, and this is a 2 cyclopentyl, and that is a 1 cyclopentyl, 2 cyclobutyl, 4 tert butyl. Now, frustratingly, when you assemble the name, that still has to be alphabetic, okay? So the assembly of the name, to the best of my recollection, nomenclature is nuts, but we'll all get through this. It's always going to be alphabetical. So alphabetically, we actually ignore these weird sort of tert, sec, bi, tri. We don't ignore iso, but we ignore all those other ones. So tert butyl is going to beat cyclobutyl and cyclopentyl. So that one's going to be first. Cyclobutyl is going to be second, and then cyclopentyl is going to be third. So we can now structure these so that 1 cyclopentyl cycloheptane, okay, and then we take the next name, 2 cyclobutyl, and we have to add a dash in between them, 2 cyclobutyl, 1 cyclopentyl cycloheptane, and now we add that for tert butyl, 2 cyclopentyl, 1 cyclobutyl, 1 cyclopentyl, cyclohepto. There you go. And you notice when you have some sort of words with dashes in it, it's common to put them in parentheses to keep the dashes separated. But what you have here is a 4 tert butyl, 2 cyclobutyl, 1 cyclopentyl, cycloheptane. Okay, that is fine. Now let's look at something that's a little bit different. So this is not a cyclic system, this is a linear system, and it still has some of the same foibles as our last discussion. All right, so first, like always, we have to find the primary chain. And that's going to be the longest chain, longest continuous chain you can make. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We do 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there you go. This is our longest chain in the structure. It is an 11 carbon chain, and an 11 carbon chain is an undekel or an undecane. Undekel would be if it were stuck on something, but undecane is an 11 carbon chain. All right, now we've got substituents on it, and you'll notice the substituents. What do we have? We have a methyl group here and a methyl group here, and then we have this group here. All right, and then this group here, and these are 3 different groups. So this is a pretty cool problem right here. And you'll also notice something a bit frustrating. Okay, so your chain sort of goes right through here. And that means that your substituents both start. I've started at 4, but what happens if I went the other way, right? Then that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So where do I start numbering? Because I might have started numbering wrong, right? So I can start over here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And if I do that, then what I end up with is a 4, whatever that is, 5, whatever that is, 8, 8. So an 8 methyl, 8 methyl. So 4, 5, 8, 8 is going to have a higher number than 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will all be clear in just a second, but I think the order is going to start with this one, this carbon right here being 1. We'll get into it just a second, but let's name the substituents before we get on these. So this is going to be a methyl. In fact, there are 2 methyls on there, so it's going to be a dimethyl. If there were some methyl over here, we could probably say now we've got a trimethyl, but there's 2 methyls on a single carbon, so that's a dimethyl. And whenever you have 2 methyls, 2 functional groups on the same carbon, it doesn't matter what it is, you repeat the number they're on. So if this here were a methyl and an ethyl, then this would be carbon number 8, 8, methyl ethyl. Assuming that it's 8, right? So if it's 8, it would be 8, 8. If it's 4, which I think we are going to want to make it 4, so we can get rid of these numbers a bit. So let's go back to numbering it this way, and you'll see why. 1, 2, 3, 4 is if we call this 4, 4 dimethyl, that's going to be a lower number than if you have 2 8s. Because, I mean, yes, 6, 7, 8. You'll end up with an 8 regardless because this group has an 8 in it, but there's only going to be 1 8. All right. And then we get to this red group here. And now the red group, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a 4. So that's a butyl of some kind, but it's not a tert butyl because this has a proton here. So it's not a tertiary carbon. That's a secondary carbon. And those in that configuration are called an isobutyl. An isobutyl group. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And then let's look at this one. What is this one down here? That's got 1, 2, 3. All right, 3 carbons. So that's a propyl of some kind. It's this same Y shape. So these Y shapes, they all sort of have this iso group. So then this is going to be isopropyl. All right, and if we put our numbers in the way I suggested, for 4 isobutyl will be 7, and isopropyl will be 8, then that would give us 4, 4, 7, 8. Numbering it the other way would give us 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 8. So if you do it the other way, that'd be 4, that'd be a 5, and that'd be 8, and then 8. And you can see that overall you end up with 2 8s, which is sad when you can end up with 1. So you always want to have the fewest big numbers, the most small numbers. It's like golf. Just you're golfing on a field of hydrocarbons. So we're going to settle there. Now, the ordering, of course, is the root is an decane. And now we got to do this alphabetically. Alphabetically. So what goes first? First of all, we ignore di. We ignore ditri, we ignore tert, but we don't ignore iso. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So iso comes first, and in the grand scheme of things, isobutyl is going to be first, so that means isopropyl must be second, and dimethyl must be third. So now we can assemble this word. Move this in decane over here because it's probably going to be long. 7-isobutyl is the very first one down here. 8-isopropyl. It's going to go down here, and then 4,4-dimethyl. It's going to go right there. Let's give that a little twist. There we go. And add our dashes. So 8-isobutyl dash 8-isopropyl dash 4,4-dimethyl undecane. Okay, and this part doesn't need a dash. That's going to basically be one gigantic word. 7-isobutyl, 8-isopropyl, 4,4-dimethyl undecane. Hot dog. That's right.